On 22nd April of 1974, six men drove to a home audio shop in Utah. They planned on robbing the store, taking hostages, and killing anybody who they encountered inside. At the time the men arrived, the store was just about to close and there were two employees inside, 18-year-old Michelle Ansley and 20-year-old Stanley Walker. Two of the assailants remained outside with the two vans they'd driven to the scene, while the other four men entered the store with their handguns drawn. They quickly threatened and overpowered Michelle and Stanley, walked them down into the basement and restrained them before walking back upstairs and beginning to rob the store. A short time later, another person came to the store. He was a 16-year-old boy named Courtney Nesbitt, and he wanted to thank Stanley for letting him use the parking lot while he was running errands earlier. As soon as he walked through the door, he became another hostage in the basement. That evening, Stanley's father, Orrin Walker, arrived at the store, concerned that his son had never come home from his shift. Once again, he was added to the hostages. The same thing happened to Courtney Nesbitt's mother, Carol, who also came to see if her son was still at the store. The six assailants were now managing a total of 5 hostages. One of the men left to get something from one of the vans outside and came back with an empty bottle hidden in a paper bag, which they poured drain cleaner into. They asked Orrin Walker to force the other hostages to drink the drain cleaner, but then he wouldn't. He was tied up and gagged, then left lying on his stomach. Then, two of the perpetrators sat up the rest of the hostages and attempted to make them drink the liquid by lying and saying that it was a mix of alcohol and sleeping medication. The perpetrators thought the drain cleaner will kill the hostages quickly and easy, but instead it was absolute torture. As soon as the liquid touched the mouths of the victims, it caused burns to the tongues and made their lips blister and peel. Orrin was the last person to be forced to drink the poison, but he had already seen the damage it had caused, and he didn't believe it was alcohol or sleeping medication. He pretended to drink from the bottle, but didn't swallow, and then forced himself to scream and convulse like the others. One of the perpetrators, a 21-year-old man, Dale Pierre, was frustrated that the victims weren't dying instantly. With his handgun, he shot both Courtney and Carol in the head. Carol was killed instantly, but Courtney survived the wound. Dale then tried to kill Orrin and missed, so he fatally shot Stanley before trying to shoot Orrin again. This time, the bullet made contact, but it was only a flesh wound. Believing that the rest of the hostages were dead, Dale then sexually assaulted 18-year-old Michelle. After the assault, he let her get up and use the bathroom before throwing her to the ground and fatally shooting her. Michelle Ansley's last words were, "I'm too young to die." At this point, the perpetrators finally noticed that they hadn't succeeded in killing Orrin. Dale climbed on top of him and tried to strangle him with the length of a wire, but it didn't work. Then they placed a pen inside his ear canal and stomped on his head, causing the pen to puncture his eardrum. Believing that Orrin had finally died, the men loaded up their van and fled the scene. 3 hours later, Orrin's family came to the store, concerned after both Stanley and Orrin had failed to come home. They found the store in disarray, and when Orrin's son heard strange noises coming from the basement, he broke into the store through the back door while his mother called 911. First responders found 2 of the victims, Michelle and Stanley, were dead on the scene and couldn't be revived. Carol Nesbitt was rushed to a nearby hospital and was dead on arrival. Due to the extent of Courtney Nesbitt's injuries, he was expected to die, but despite his severe brain damage, he clung to life. After almost a year of intensive treatment in hospital, he was released, although he would suffer from his brain injuries for the rest of his life. Despite Orrin Walker being poisoned, shot, strangled, and stabbed with a pen through his eardrum, he was alive and lucid. While he had serious chemical burns to his face from the drain cleaner and a damaged eardrum, he was able to describe the assailants to the authorities. Only hours after the murders were reported on the news, the police received a call from a concerned man who was in the Air Force. He told them that he remembered a concerning conversation with an Air Force helicopter mechanic, 19-year-old William Andrews, who had once told him that one of these days, "I'm going to rob that HIFI shop, and if anyone gets in the way, I'm going to kill them." Only a couple hours later, the connection between the crime and the Air Force strengthened. A couple of kids had been dumpster diving at the nearby Air Force base where they found several wallets containing the driving licenses of each of the victims. The detective who arrived at the dumpsters found that a crowd had gathered, and believing that the killers were connected to the Air Force, he thought there was a good chance that they would be in the crowd. He decided to try and scare the killers by putting on a dramatic show as he used tongs to remove the evidence from the dumpster. Sure enough, he noticed two men in the crowd acting suspicious. While everybody else was silently watching as he retrieved all the evidence, two men were engaged in a loud conversation while anxiously waving around their hands. The two men were Dale Pierre, and the other man was the one who Orrin had described to the cops, William Andrews, who had told his friend that he was going to rob a store one day. Both Dale and William were questioned, while officers worked to obtain a search warrant for their barrack rooms. Inside, investigators found several flyers for the store that they had targeted, as well as a storage unit contract. After getting a second search warrant for the storage unit, they found several pieces of equipment that had been stolen from the HIFI store, as well as the bottle of drain cleaner that had been used to poison the hostages. Now, the police had two of the perpetrators. After a few weeks, a third man was identified after questioning. He was 19-year-old Keith Roberts, who was also an airman, but although he admitted to being an accomplice in the robbery, he claimed that he'd waited outside of the vans the whole time and had no idea about the horrors that Dale and William were committing inside the store. All three perpetrators were charged with aggravated robbery and first-degree murder, and a date was set for a joint trial. Both Dale and William were found guilty of all charges and sentenced to death. However, Keith was only found guilty of robbery and acquitted of murder. During the trial, the jury learned that Dale and William had agreed that they would rob the store and kill everyone inside. They had even spent time researching how to quickly and easily kill people. The use of drain cleaner had been inspired by a 1983 film named Magnum Force, where a sex worker was forced to drink drain cleaner and then died immediately. The two men had watched the film together several times, and without any further research, they decided that drain cleaner would be the perfect way to instantly kill their victims. Both their executions for Dale and William were viewed as the scum of earth by other prisoners, especially on death row. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Dale, William, and Keith, there was never enough evidence to convict the remaining three assailants, who still remain unnamed to this day.